Beaver Island is in the middle of Lake Michigan. There are two ways to get there, by boat or by plane. In this piece, we introduce you to Pauk Welke. He's been flying to and from Beaver Island for 40 years, a man with a deep love for the island and its people. A beautiful morning on Beaver Island, and a familiar and comforting sound echoes through the air. That sound is one of the island's most loved and respected men at work, Pauk Welke, doing what he's done for 40 years.
He's very laid back, very quiet individual that does not want to be out in the forefront of anything. And if you try to put him in it, he puts his hat on and kind of pulls it down and hides. But if he needs to express his opinion, he definitely can do that too.
Paul's dad, Bill Welke, was a flight engineer in World War II, flying B-25s. So you could say flying was already in his blood.
I began learning to fly the summer of 1965 and sold on my 16th birthday, September 5th, 1965, and then got my private pilot's license a little over a year later, while I was still in high school.
In 1969, his family bought the old Gallagher farm on Beaver Island while he was going to college for a business degree.
I'm not real sure. It wasn't anything that was really well planned out, and my first goal was finish college and move there. And when I got there, I had to kind of figure out how I could make a living. It's kind of opposite what most people do.
Paul soon got his first job with McPhillips Flying Service during deer season. That was in 1972.
That was pretty exciting, you know. I was getting paid $3 a trip, and looking at my logbooks, the most trips I ever made a day was 5, so I was making a whopping $15 a day. But to me, in those days, it was like I couldn't believe somebody was actually paying me to fly an airplane. You know, it's a pretty exciting thing. And I think that kind of, you know, my career focused on that's what I wanted to do.
Then in 1975, Welke Aviation was started with this Piper Apache.
We had no expectations that it would turn into what it has today. We purchased one small twin-engine airplane, and our hope was that we would do enough business that would pay for the plane. And obviously we went way beyond that.
In 1983, Welke Aviation and McPhillips merged, and Island Airways was born. After thousands of flights back and forth from the island to Charlevoix, Paul has seen it all.
One that comes to mind I thought about a lot over the years was the evening that the Fitzgerald sank. I'd flown from the island to Charlevoix and picked up 2 passengers. And when I left here to go back to the island, the weather was considerably worse going back. There's no way of determining your ground speed, but I hadn't realized the wind had switched from the southwest to the straight out of the west. And by the time I got to the island, the wind was blowing about 70 miles an hour right straight out of the west. And then, unfortunately, later that evening, we found out the next day the Fitzgerald had gone down in Lake Superior.
He's been the pilot for some notable people as well.
Oh, like Norm Cash, you know, when I was growing up, was a well-known Detroit Tiger, and some odd-men people like that, congressmen, senators.
The island sports teams.
We go to places like Manistee, Escanaba, Sault Ste. Marie, Mackinac Island, Helston. That's an away game. When they do a home game, we fly those schools off the island to Beaver Island. At times, we have to mobilize like 3 aircraft to do this, up to 27 passengers at one time.
There's a lot of things here.
Some strange cargo takes flight with Paul, like this frozen pig flown over for a pig roast. And that's not all.
We've hauled goats and sheep and chickens and turkeys live. We've hauled a fair amount of like automobile engines and heavy equipment parts. We've done a lot of real odd building materials.
But it's in an emergency that Paul's character truly shines. On February 8, 2001, a jet went down on the island during a storm. A massive ground search with about 100 islanders was launched. When the Coast Guard stopped searching the next morning due to weather, Paul kept looking.
Nobody had any idea whether it was on the island or in Lake Michigan, so I decided to launch my own search. And ultimately, after maybe 30, 40 minutes from when I started, I found the wreckage. And fortunately, the 4 passengers, a family of 4, had survived it, and the 2 pilots that did not survive it.
There are countless stories about Paul helping the island's people.
28 years ago, my wife was pregnant with twin boys, and At 2 o'clock in the morning, she started feeling funny, so I called Paul, and he took us over to Charlevoix. 2.5 hours later, the twins were born 5 weeks premature, so they wouldn't have made it if they were born on the island.
Even when there was a massive forest fire in the Upper Peninsula and smoke was covering Beaver Island.
And I was getting a lot of phone calls because of the fire chief wanting to know what was burned on the island, and we had known that it was the smoke plume from the UP. So Paul, I called him, and he said, well, I'll do you a favor. I'll go up and fly over the island so everybody can hear. At least the plane went up and put them all to bed. So he did that, and so he'll do anything for you.
And it's not just the island's people he cares so deeply for.
My dad had this dog that was absolutely, next to his wife, the love of his life. The dog was hit by a car and was in a very, very bad state. Pauk Welke and his family flew that dog to the mainland on a private flight so it could get to the vet, because if it didn't, it wasn't going to survive. And I remember when my dad opened the statement, written at the bottom was the words, "Dog lovers discount, no charge."
But also a caretaker too. When people take trips, I've heard of at least 6 or 7 dogs sleeping in the bed with them as he's babysitting. So yeah, he really cares for not only humans but for animals too.
This year, Island Airways got their air ambulance license back. Another thing they really didn't need to do.
Pauk Welke has had my family's back for decades, and I am very, very appreciative of him for that and the sacrifice that he's made for this community, so that we can all breathe a little easier knowing that he's here and can take us out in a pinch. I value that probably more than any other service on this island, that he can get us out of here if we need to.
October 26th marks Paul's 40th year flying to and from Beaver Island, an estimated 40,000 flights.
As a lifelong customer of Island Airways and a huge fan of Pauk Welke's, how comforting it is to know when you pull into that airport and the weather might look a little iffy, when you see Pauk Welke in Charlevoix, you know you're going home.
We're just thankful that Paul has been around here, and he's saved a lot of lives on the island, and I hope he will continue to do the service that he has. He's been an excellent person and very well needed around here.
The common question I get is that, well, how much longer are you going to continue to do this? And I say, well, I don't have any plans as work, because there's no other place I'd want to go, and as long as I'm going to be here, I might as well be productive. What more could I do to be productive than do what I'm doing?
Next, the gift of flight.